Restaurant Marketing Secrets, episode 127. I'm your host, Matt Plapp, and we are brought to you by America's Best Restaurants. America's Best Restaurants is on a path to help independent restaurants find more frequent customers because infrequent customers don't pay the bills. Our acronym is ABR. Yes, America's Best Restaurants, but also attract, build, retain. Attract the attention of consumers who know or should know about your restaurant. Build loyalty with those people, and retain your customers. There's a lot of different ways that works, a lot of components in there. But at the end of the day, if you attract, build, and retain, you will succeed long term. Today, we are talking about part 2 of the DSP event in Las Vegas. So if you haven't listened to the last episode, get off of this one and go back to the last one and check out what we're talking about. We're on tip number 10. This was a 2-day event I went to last week. We're actually in Vegas for 3.5 days. 1 day with restaurant owners having a good time, out and about, people we know, like, and trust. Some of them that work with us, some that don't. But then also at the event for 2 days. And I went through the first 9 items I had. I loved it. Number 10 here is core values. Now, I got to find it in here because it was wild. Actually, I think we got the example on the page. I think he said it out loud. But here's some of the core values of your restaurant. And we're actually going through this right now with our company as we're going through and building our core values as a business. We're trying to identify what is important to America's Best Restaurants with regards to how our employees, when they're hired and what standard they're held to, when clients come on board, what standard they're held to, and then the relationship and our company. And we're going through those. Some things that we've identified are our loyalty, our positive growth mindset. There's a lot of things like that. But he talked about an example of a steakhouse. And he said, and I don't know if this is a true story or not, but he said, imagine you got a restaurant that you're the owner and you're having a charity event. And you got 100 steaks coming in for this charity event that you're involved with that's near and dear to you. And you've got a core value set up. That this is how we run our business. And your delivery truck doesn't come that morning. So your truck, something happened, the steaks weren't on the truck. They weren't available. So now you're there at this event. You're there at the restaurant 5-6 hours ahead of time. And you got a quandary. You can't find your steaks from anybody. The only option is to go across the street to the grocery store. You go across the street to the grocery store, there's 2 things that could happen. Number one, you could go against the core values. If, let's say, your core value is to have amazing, high-quality food and never settle for anything but the best. It was something of that nature. And so your chef goes across the street to this grocery store, and he's in a panic and says, I need 100 steaks. And he looks at the price, just give me those 100. So he gets those 100, they get them prepared. He thinks he saved the day. And you walk in that night, ready to shake hands, kiss babies, have a great event. Your steak comes out, and you're like, what in the hell is this? It is nowhere near the standard steak. And you walk back like, dude, what is this? Like, you're wanting to rip his head off. And he's like, oh, don't worry, bro. I saved the day. Our truck showed up from our distributor. There was no steaks on it. I couldn't find them anywhere. I went across to the grocery store. I saved us $1,000 by getting these on top of saving the day and getting the steaks. And otherwise, we weren't going to have them. Or the opposite could happen. That the chef goes across the street and they've got these giant Wagyu steaks. And he says, hey, I understand it's going to cost us more money. This isn't going to help us on this event, but it's going to hold our standards, which is our excellence, our standards of excellence. Give me 100 of those Wagyus. You walk in and you see this giant steak and you know what it is. And you walk in and go, my gosh, dude, what happened? Where did these come from? And the chef says, hey, you know what? I understand they're not in line with our pricing. It's going to cost us $1,000. We're going to lose more money on this event. But our shipment didn't come in. And I knew this, number one, our core principles, our core values are the quality and our standards of excellence. And this was my only option with the truck not showing up, going across the street. I didn't want to settle for less. I wanted to go over the top so that we held up. He's like, then at that point, okay, you got a different conversation about food costs and things of that nature in the future, but you have your core values. So I think that's a huge element. That's a big one that we're going through with our company right now. Number 11, if you're not a good fit mentally and with the mindset, we don't want to work with you. It won't work. It will fail. That was DSP's message to the crowd. On day 2, he took about an hour after lunch, and he walked through what he did with restaurants. Because at that point, if you're one of the 98 people in the room, you just heard a day and a half from him. And I was before lunch, so you heard 45 minutes or so from me, and then there was a couple vendors the day before it talked about the checklist software, and there was one other vendor escaping me what they did. But you had basically a day and a half of David Scott Peters, and if you weren't massively impressed and blown away and scared shitless about how you're not doing most of this, because most of them weren't, then you probably are numb to the situation and you aren't there. But everybody that's there was pretty much in the same thing. Like, dude, this is what we got to have. So we spent an hour after lunch saying, hey, this is who we are. I'm not inexpensive. This is a large investment. In order to work with us, it costs this much money. But I'm going to walk you through why, what, when, and where he is. But before we get to that, I'm going to let you know before we even talk about money, you're going to go through a couple phone calls to make sure you are a good fit. Because if you aren't a good fit mentally, the way you act, the way you run your business, the way you perceive everything, then we're not even going to take you to the second call and work with you. We're not going to take your money. Because if you're not a good fit, it'll just fail. And I can relate with that. Because I've got restaurants right now that aren't good fits that we work with. You know, I always say that you've got to have a growth mindset. You got to be willing to think outside the box. You've got to be positive. You've got to be two-way. I love some of our clients, a lot of our clients that we have these two-way conversations. It's not like, hey, it's not working, we're blaming you. It's like I had a restaurant the other day told me, everything we've done is not working, it's our fault. And I'm like, dude, look in the mirror. You know, you gave us a shit sandwich. We're trying to make the best out of it. You've never marketed your restaurant. It's not branded. It's not funded well. You got a bad location. You got an average concept. That's not the marketing's fault. There's a lot of other problems there. I've got clients. I've got one particular client that has a really cool concept that has some negatives going with it. And he brings it up. Hey, I understand. You guys can't fix this, this, and this. Let's figure out how we can get around it. And it's a teamwork. And that was a big thing I was really impressed with David Scott Peters talked about was what I'm looking for, he doesn't negotiate that. You're either a fit or you're not. And if you're not a fit, don't come on board. They're not even going to give you a second phone call. And that's something we've got to do better as a company because sometimes we've taken clients on like, oh, we could be a superhero, and we're not. And they also don't want to do the work. I had a restaurant last week tell me that he wasn't willing to do the extra work that was needed to succeed. And I wanted to reach to the phone and strangle that guy. I'm being completely honest. I'm like, dude, this is your restaurant. This is what needs to happen. What the hell you mean you aren't willing to do it? That's ludicrous. But he wasn't. Not a good fit for us, which is one of the reasons I had no problem saying, hey, bro, adios. Next one, a selling contest. I love this. This was pretty cool. I'd never heard of this. Y'all probably have, but I'd never heard of it. It was called Steal the $20 Bill. So you got an idea? You know what? We've got 20 of these steaks tonight. I want all 20 of these steaks sold or 20 of these burgers or 20 of these bottles of wine. And it's called Steal the 20. The first person to sell one of these walks up to the manager and takes the $20 bill. Walks up, taps him, sold one, great, takes 20. Now at that point forward, everybody afterwards that sells one of those steals the 20 from the person that has it. So at the end of the night, when the contest is over or the last one sold, has the 20. I thought that was pretty cool. I could see doing that with our company, and I'm going to put it in place, but I loved it. Next one. The manager eats for free. He talked about a lot of restaurant concepts out there where the manager eats for free. And he said some of the things that irk him are that you see a manager making something special, walks back to the chef, hey, what do you got? Let's do something different. And they order something special with me because, oh, I'm tired of our food. I've eaten it so much. He's like, meanwhile, that guy's gone to Chipotle every week the past 52 weeks and eating the same damn meal on his own time. And he's like, that ends now. Your owner, your employees, your managers should never eat anything that's not on the menu. And then if it's a free menu item, if they get it for free, if your manager has comped their meals or your employees or whoever, they eat what you pick. So let's say you got 52 items, or let's just call it 28 items in your menu. And you got 28 days they work in that month. And they get a meal each time. You pick the item they do. So they've tasted it and they understand it, and then they're going to rate it. They're going to have a sheet they fill out to rate that item. Love that idea. Number 14, you must have a signature item. He talked about one of his margarita clients that does like $1.4 million, or a Mexican restaurant, $1.4 million in margaritas. He's got this very specific, audacious, gigantic margarita. And that is their signature item. That your restaurant needs to have something that it is known for, that people are excited about, that you make a lot of money off of, that sells really well. And I agree with that at a very high level. Oh man, this was funny. Page 77. This was your menu descriptions. Here's what's ironic about this, was that 3 of the things David said on Thursday morning came true Wednesday at lunch. Thursday morning, Thursday at lunch. Thursday morning, he brought up the fact of, number one, you walk up to the front of a restaurant, you're not properly greeted, and you as the customer are the one that takes the initiative to get them to seat you. We walked up to a restaurant called Bacon Nation, which was inside the D Casino, because we were near downtown, near Fremont Street in Vegas. And the lady, sitting there, we were standing there for at least a minute. I make a noise with my foot, kind of like, okay, let's make a little noise. Maybe she'll see us. She turned around after wiping menu. Oh, have you been helped yet? Like, the hell do you think we've been helped? You're standing here. No, we've not been helped. But he talked about how that's rampant. And this lady she still didn't see us. Somebody else, she went and got somebody else, and that lady complained about the girl not doing her job correctly, which was ironic. Second part was the menus. And this restaurant didn't have this problem. Their menu descriptions were great, but beat down and worn out menus you could not read. That either were way too busy, or way too much food, or just not presented well. This one, literally, I texted him a picture of the menu. I said, dude, you can't make this up. You just mentioned this a half hour ago, and it came true. We got a menu we can't even read. And then the third was talking about the wait staff and how they don't know the product, and they're just real uninterested, and this guy was that. But this item here on page 77 of this workbook, I'll have to ask David if he sells this workbook or if there's a way to get it online. That would be pretty valuable. But he talked about your menu item name and descriptive writing. And so he's got an example. This is 100% from a restaurant that he found. And then the other one, the good one, is actually one of the restaurants that was in the room. And so the chicken sandwich, this sandwich, it's called breast of chicken sandwich. The description, lettuce, tomato, mayo, provolone cheese, $9.95. He's like, number one, the title of the sandwich, breast of chicken sandwich. And this is a real life sandwich he found on a menu. And the second part, he said, it sounded like I had a grocery list there. Lettuce, tomato, mayo, and provolone cheese. Whereas the other one was a restaurant that was in the room, which apparently this is around their location, the Point Saint sandwich. Perfectly tender, buttermilk crispy chicken topped with a cilantro cabbage slaw, served with sweet chili aioli on our house-made brioche bun. And he talked about the importance of storytelling and descriptions and your titles of your menu items and the descriptions of them. Agree completely. Re-engineering your menu. This was awesome. He showed examples, 3 examples of restaurants that re-engineered their menu. One of the examples was a restaurant that was in the audience, and how number one, they knew their data. They knew their PMIX. Number 2, they knew their cash contributors, their biggest ones. They knew the actual cost of everything they sold. And the one restaurant was able to eliminate 3 items from their menu. They were big sellers. So customers love these items, but he got rid of them because they weren't making money. And those customers stayed around and bought items that did make money. Talked about the menu design and where the eyes go. Like if you got a menu sitting in front of you, it's one big page and it's 3 columns. They don't go to the center bottom column. Your center bottom column should be your drink selections, your salads, your sides. That items that intersect in that middle and the top corners should have boxes around them and pictures of that product and really descriptive. And that's what people are going to do. Those items should be those big cash contributors that you can engineer your menu to make money. And he showed an example of a restaurant that re-engineered their menu, and it was $30,000. I think it was within 3 months. No changes except re-engineered the menu. And I was like, wow, we got to have more of that training from David Scott Peters in our ABRU. I got to figure that out. Okay. Yeah, I think the note I made on here was, by re-engineering your menu, you can lower your labor costs and food costs since you're selling the right items. And it's wild to show. He showed how it impacted the food cost and the labor cost by selling the correct items. Number 17, we're either going to be friends or we're not going to work together. This goes back to his culture, his core values, and him working with only restaurants that he would be friends with. He's like, if somebody works with me and they fire us, they don't work with us anymore, we're still friends. If we can't have that relationship before and after, there's a problem. Number 18, don't focus efforts on non-factors. And what he was talking about was, he's like, pulled up an example and he's like, look at this item. Your wine in this example represents 1% or $1,000 of your monthly sales. Why are you spending any time at all thinking about making a change there? Whereas you got this item up here that is 38% of your sales. That's where your focus should be, on re-engineering those items. And he also talked about in that element about portioning, because it came down to, like, we were, Chris, who I went to lunch with actually every meal there from BBQ Productions, talked about French fries, how he had a friend of his who had a Euro cart / truck or some sorts, and how he convinced him to go, I want to say it was like 7 ounces of fries or something. And the guy saved like 50 G's a year. Because he looked in his garbage, and look in your garbage can. Are there a lot of leftover fries? You got too many fries. You got too big a portion. You got somebody with a Sasquatch hand instead of a little tiny hand grabbing a bunch of fries out. And let's portion our food correctly. And he talked about that those efforts, when you look at that 38%, that item that's selling 38%, let's say it's a burger fry combo. And you can figure out how to make that burger and fry combo an awesome product. You never want to skimp on quality, but make more money on it. That's where your energy should go, not to the thing that's 1%. And he said on page 32 of this book, your sales and budget will tell you where to spend your time. Then last but not least, I've mentioned this a couple times, was your cash contributors. This was wow factor to me because I had never heard it, and I'm guessing you guys have all probably heard this before. But he talked about how when you've got your menu, let's say you've got 50 items on your menu, and you look and you see that this one sells 1,000 every month, and it's got a cash contribution of $7 a piece. So you've got $7,000 in profit from that because it's taken off your food cost. And I think it was your prime. I think cash contribution, if I recall, was your prime cost, your labor and your food cost. I'll have to double check on the DSP podcast when I get him on here. But he talked about, you take that item and you understand that, okay, I've got 1,000 that each contribute $7. There's whatever the hell that would be, $70,000. Is that right? Public school math here. So if you got 1,000 items that sell at a $7 contribution, $7,000 in your bottom line, whereas you've got one item that sells 200 and you make 3, that's 600. So you've got a variance of 7,000 to 600, let's say, on a weekly basis. Spend your time on and understand those cash contributors. Understand those items that are paying the bills and figure out how to sell more of them and how to get rid of the dogs. So, I mean, his stuff on menu engineering, on pricing, on food costs was just mind-blowing. And I trust his numbers in the fact that 9 out of 10 restaurants don't do any of this stuff. He said, in fact, the room I was in, outside of the people that work with him, there was only like 2 out of like 90 or so. I think there was 98 people in the room. There was like 3 different restaurants in the room. So let's assume those are 7, 8 people. 90 or so people, only like 2 people raised their hand that had all of this stuff happening. And he said, Matt, that's the industry, which blew me away because I come from the retail world where you sell something for what you got in it. Here's what we have in it. You mark it up. You work off your margins. Apparently that a lot of restaurants just think they know what an item costs, and then they make up a random number and they price it based on what they think it should be, not based on what it could be and relative to the impact it has on the menu. So That's all I got there. Stay tuned. I'm going to get David Scott Peters on a podcast, one of my restaurant expert roundups. We'll do a special edition next week or two and go over my takeaways from his event. You'll love it. Just make sure you find me on, go to mattplapp.com, scroll to the bottom. There's all the links for LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. You'll see it when we go live. You'll see a notification when it's going to happen. But in the meantime, why don't you go to abru.online/deals. This is the Plapp Friday deals. This is my take on Black Friday. I started this Black Friday. It's going to go to the end of December. There are 5 things on that page. There is our content guide, which is a must-have for restaurants to teach you how to take back the algorithm and market your restaurant at a high level online. There are the 4-day on-site with my team taking your restaurant to a new level. There's 3 days on-site at our headquarters with your restaurant. There's 2-day or offer number 2, which is the Masters Restaurant Marketing Masters Program. And then the number 1 is 1-to-1 with MP. So go there, check those out. Would love to have you on board at some capacity. That's all I got. I'll see you next episode.